Hello, hello, hello. Hey everybody, how's it going? Almost said Friday. Happy Thursday from our headquarters here in San Francisco. Where's everyone dialing in from today? Let me turn this music down just a little bit here. Double check that my sound's working. Test, test, test. What's up from Phoenix? Hello, hello. Awesome. Wow, we have 23 people here today. I'm really excited for this webinar. We've done one of these webinars before in a similar style, inspired by Bob Ross. So hopefully we'll work through making a notebook together, a little bit more chill than our other webinars that we typically do in this channel. Howdy from Connecticut. Wow, Connecticut, awesome. And then France. Wow, France. It's one of the best parts about having these webinars. We get to see the global community of folks using Julius or just tuning in from everywhere around the world. Really, really, really cool. All right, let this keep on. We'll let folks trickle in a little bit more. I'll turn the music up just a little bit. It's going to be more of a chill webinar today. Yeah, so continuing on what I was saying, really chill workshop session to walk through how we make notebooks and how to get started using a notebook, actually in a live setting. So we'll give you guys a code to subscribe to Julius if you guys aren't already, just to trial it out for the next 3 days, 3 or 5 days, I can't remember. We'll actually give you guys the files that we're going to use too. So in case you guys don't have actual files to use in your analysis, or maybe you don't have permissions to use your organization's files or to connect to them directly, we'll give you guys some files too that we'll all work on together here as well. Let me grab that code for y'all and just double check which one it is. I believe it's Julie. Let me double check. Let me double check real quick. Okay. New create console. All right, from Ecuador, awesome. Birmingham, Colombia, wow, awesome. Yeah, it's kind of overcast today in San Francisco. It's been weird weather here recently. But kind of overcast today, but no matter. Let's grab that code for you really quickly here. I think the code is, and I'll type it into the chat here. It is, pretty sure it's Julius Ross 25, but let me double check. Yes. Ziptune. Bob Ross 25 is the code. Let me double check that this is going to work. It looks like it should work still. I'm going to type this right in here. Yeah, Kushi, after the webinar, we'll give the recording. And with all of our other webinars that we've done previously, they're all available here on our Julius YouTube channel as well. So you could check out those recordings that we have. Mix of 3 different webinars we typically go between. We do like an onboarding webinar, deep dive webinars on notebooks, and then we also do one for our data connectors. So those are the 3 we typically cycle in. And then we also have some other ones that we'll do from onboardings in Spanish, for example. And then we'll also do some other special webinars like this one, which is kind of a new one that we're trialing out. And I think it's been pretty good for folks. Let me go and change over my screen here. We'll go right into the demo, and I will update my window to be Julius, and we'll do here. So again, this is probably more of a, let's say, Julius like 301 course today. Again, it's going to be pretty chill. We're going to make a notebook together. Maybe this is your first time making a notebook or even hearing about a notebook. Or maybe you're just a veteran's notebook user and trying to really understand some of the tips and tricks for how you can get started. So this is the overall UI, and let me actually go to my drive here. These are the sample files that we'll be working off of today. Let's see, my drive, and I have the Julius Workshop example files. And I'll copy and share this link and paste this into the chat as well. Ruben, we have one Spanish-speaking webinar that we have, and then we'll also have one coming up in a couple of weeks as well. But I'll share the recording after the call too. And then maybe if we have good feedback about this type of webinar, we could do this one in Spanish as well. My Spanish isn't quite good enough, even though I speak a little bit, but I'm sure Simon would love to do one in Spanish too. I just shared with you all this file. This has 4 different example files in there. It has one that has customer information, one that has marketing information, product catalog, and sales. And we'll dive into this a little bit and just show what's inside of these files and how we'll use them, but just a really brief overview that you guys can use. I did share that code earlier. That's the Bob Ross 25 code. And you could use that to get inside of your account settings. You should be able to add this here on your subscriptions. There's like a usage box, if I recall correctly, maybe under account, and then you could add that in there as well. Reason why I share that is just so you could make sure you're not going to run into any message limits throughout this workshop. And then also just to have you guys try out Julius Pro. There's a lot of cool features here that we offer that the team's been building. Okay, without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started. If you guys are going to follow along, the first step we'll do is just click into a notebook. You could do this by clicking New and clicking Notebook here. That's one way. Let me double check my sound settings real quick. I want to make sure this isn't too loud. Let me actually double check. I want to get them Spotify going too. I think that's pretty nice. Let me add this here real quick. This is a media source. And then let me add this real quick. Sorry. Screen capture. Add new. And then we're going to do not display capture, but application capture here. And we'll do the window. Let me double check here. Not this one, but we'll do this one. Cool. Apologies about that. And we'll just get this going in the corner here, just so you guys have a little bit of background music so it's not as intimidating. And finally, let me turn up the audio just a little bit. And we'll go a little bit down so it's not too loud. Cool. Jura, why do we need to use a notebook? What are the key differences with chats? We'll go through that together. I think it's hard for people to really understand, and I've tried to explain it before, and I think some of the best ways is actually show it. For those of you who have watched our onboarding webinars or haven't, you could check it out in our YouTube channel. Basically, we just go through using pretty much just chats. Chats in a nutshell, in case you haven't used Julius, just like using an LLM, right? Using ChatGPT or Claude. You just type in what you're looking for, the messages will stream up, and then Julius will fulfill it, right? Really basic, good for getting really quick insights or doing really quick analysis. But if you want to dive a little bit deeper, or as you'll see in today's webinar, really use or build something that you could reuse over time and even schedule, that's where notebooks can come in, and we'll go through that together. Okay, so getting started. So we're on a notebook here. Right. What I'm actually going to do is I'm going to close out some of these windows just to give me a little bit more screen real estate. I'm going to close out the sidebar here. And then I'm actually going to open up the right sidebar here. And this is what I'll use 99% of the time. And I've seen users use 99% of the time, have a notebook open in the left-hand panel, and then have what we call the Data Explorer in the right-hand panel. Think of it like your canvas in a way. Over here is where I'll be doing the most of the work. But on the right side is where I'll see all the data, all the different files that we're uploading, and how Julius is manipulating those files over time too. I'm going to add data sources. This is one way that you could do it, and you could select those files here. Or you could add from Google Drive. If you've connected your Google Drive, you could use this to connect as well, right? So actually, let me just use this way. I have all those same files that I shared with y'all, those 4. I'm going to select all 4 of those. You could just hold Shift to click all of those. And we're going to select and add all 4 of those different files to Julius at the same time. You can upload multiple files as well. So if you didn't connect your Google Drive, you could simply click Add Data Sources and select all 4 of those files too, and that'll upload them right into Julius. Cool. With that being said, you'll see them loaded here. This is a good sign. You'll see the 4 files, and then you also see a green check mark. That's all you need to know that, hey, my files are inside of this notebook and they're ready to go. How did I bring up the split screen? There's this little button you'll see here on the very right side that you can click, and that'll open the Data Explorer. And this is one way that you can do it. And we'll walk through some of the other ways as this starts to populate too. Cool, so we see some suggested next steps. Let's actually just type in our own prompt. One of my favorite and most used prompts when I first add in data is load and preview the data. You could click on the upper left-hand corner to run the cell, or you could do Command or Shift Enter to also run the cell. Very similar to our chat interface, right? You're just typing in to Julius what you want it to do. Julius is going to generate the code and is going to run and execute the code inside of this notebook here. So pretty straightforward, right? And then now we see over on the right side, things starting to populate. Data frames is a super fancy word for just a table of data that Julius can use, right? Fancy word. The cool thing over here in the Data Explorer is you could click on any one of these and you could actually look into those sheets that we uploaded. So here we have our customer's data frame. And this, if you're familiar with databases or tables, it has all this information that you might have in a customer's database. You'll have their ID, maybe some customer information like their customer type, if they're new or returning, their registration date or created date, maybe some demographic information. All of that is within this customer's data frame. Data frame, again, fancy word for table. The other way that you could expand some of these, as Julius is making some of the files or is running the code, is to simply click on expand here. So we see Julius had loaded those data frames, and you could just click expand, and it's going to open the respective table over here on the right-hand side. So you can sort of see the flow. Julius will interact or manipulate the data. You could click on expand to explore it yourself and take a look here too. Other really cool things you could do is like expand the actual columns if they're not big enough for the text inside of it. You could even right click and start to update or edit or even analyze some of the columns too within the Data Explorer if you want to dive into it like that. And finally, the last thing in the Data Explorer is you could always export it and download it as well. You could download it as a CSV, or you could even export it as a sheet too, right? Really handy for, hey, I want to go back into a Google Sheet. I could dive into the data, filter it, use formulas, manipulate it in a familiar environment too. Something that I found myself constantly doing before. So that's pretty much the TLDR on just loading data and the Data Explorer and why I have it open. And you'll see as we continue to work on the data and work with Julius why I keep these things open. All right, so to recap so far, we've created a notebook, we've uploaded files, and we've asked Julius to load and preview the data. So this just gets those files into Julius. And the other secondary thing that this does is it gives Julius the opportunity to dive into the data, build some sort of understanding of the marketing table, the customers table, sales table, etc. Cool. So the next step I'll do is I'm going to add another cell, right? The cool thing about notebooks is you could add cells anywhere inside of this notebook. It doesn't have to be always at the end, which is what I'm going to do right now. But you could also add cells in between. You could add a cell in the middle of these two prompts here, or you could even add a cell at the very beginning, right? Cell, you could think of it just like a building block, right? A notebook is a collection of different cells that we're running. So far I have the file upload cell or the source cell where I added those files. And I have a prompt cell, which I use to run the prompt. Okay, let's go down to the bottom here. I'm going to add one more cell, and here I'll do one step deeper. We'll have Julius do some more what they call exploratory data analysis. I really wanted to understand deeply within these 4 files, look for some trends, insights, basically a little bit more than just the surface level analysis it did in the previous step. So simply, I'll just type in, let's do some exploratory data analysis. Look for the relationship between the tables and look for any interesting insights. Yeah, that's one way to put it, David, is the cell is basically a step in a workflow. You could always reorder them or cut a cell and enter it in anywhere else. You could rerun cells. And the reason why I say workflow is generally at the very end, which we'll do, if you have a really nice and polished notebook, you could actually run all of them in that same sequence, whichever order you had set them in, right? We'll get there, but that's sort of the sneak preview of where we'll go with notebooks and some of the key unlocks basically for notebooks. How much data can I, let me expand the window, work on simultaneously? You could work on a number, like I think it's not limited actually, the actual number of files you could do. The size of the files might vary, right? I think it could handle gigabytes of files. At that point, when you're doing like tens of gigabytes or even more than that, the bottleneck isn't on Julius, it's more on the upload speed of your internet and your ability to upload files. It's possible, but Julius can handle it. Okay, so here we go. So we have Julius had done the exploratory data analysis. Let's take a scroll down here. We'll read through briefly. Here you can see it's doing some understanding of, hey, these are the columns within those different tables that we did. Then you can see it's gathering some more interesting stats like customers and sales, demographics. Scrolling down even more, it's even starting to visualize some of this information. Like, hey, there's some breakdowns by revenue on product category, for example. And it's starting to join revenue on marketing campaigns. Pretty interesting. And then even starting to visualize some revenue over time. And then finally, this is an interesting one, CLV. I'm not sure what CLV stands for, to be honest. Oh, customer lifetime value here. Okay. Versus order amount by income bracket. So that's another interesting way it's found already, just from us doing those two simple prompts. So first, loading and previewing the data, and then second, diving in just a little bit deeper on the data as well. And then finally, we have some very quick takeaways. It looks like Julius started to do some summaries of, hey, products map to catalog. Does that make sense? Our catalog of products probably has a whole bunch of products in there, and this maps to the sales. Does that make sense? Categories and campaigns, electronics dominates. Okay, some key insights here. And let's see what else. And even has some suggestions on what it wants to do next, or what it can imagine it can do next. So we could clean and improve campaign linkage, maybe. We could build a star schema. We could also identify top growth strategies. So this is the typical workflow I'll do. Load and preview the data first, do some EDA, so exploratory data analysis. Next, let's just add in a cell, and let's try to do a really cool visualization. Let's say, can you make a really cool visualization that shows the top selling products by demographic? Let's try this out. And we'll run this. You might be wondering, and I'm not sure myself, which model this is. You can always check this in the chat settings here in the upper right-hand corner. Click on the cogwheel, and you can see the model itself here. If you guys do use the code that we provided earlier, you could use it to access all these different advanced models. That's one of the cool things. Maybe we could try this out in the webinar, showing a little bit of the differences here between these. And you'll notice a larger difference in the way it visualizes, and we'll also show this too, but this is one of the ways that you could change the model that powers Julius, essentially, and that writes all the code and does all the thinking. Cool. So here, this is a good case. So you'll see sometimes Julius will run into errors in the code it writes. Nothing to worry about. You could expand it if you really care or want to understand this. I don't understand it myself personally. But Julius will rewrite the code in order to work around that error that it ran into. So one thing to watch out for. Nothing you have to do on your end, but Julius was able to work around it there. How do you know which model to use? That's sort of a personal preference, if you will. I think each model has its own pros and cons, right? I think GPT-5 is pretty thorough in the way it thinks, but I've seen it get kind of stuck sometimes. I think it's not as, I don't know what the right word is, confident as other models. It usually asks for permission to do something, or like ask for confirmation from what I've seen. But I think it's capable of doing really cool visualizations like this, right? Anthropic, really cool models like the Claude one. I think some of their visualizations are really, really good. But it all comes down to personal preference, and I say just try them out. Let's take a look at some of these visualizations. So here you can see it generated 8 visualizations. Again, if you're ever unsure, like, hey, what's, or if you want to like dive in a little bit deeper on some of these, you can always click this too, and it'll open it up in the side panel. And I really like this. This is a really cool chart. But let's imagine we wanted to do, we wanted to focus on a specific demographic. Let's purely focus on the 46 to 55 demographic. any interesting trends or visualizations. And we'll try this one out. But continuing on the thought, we have a couple of videos inside of our YouTube channel where we talk through or even just show the same exact prompt, the same exact data with 5 different models. And you can actually see, hey, just the way that they generate code, and maybe the speed is different. Maybe the way it visualizes the results is different, but it really does depend. How does it handle BigQuery as a data source? That's a good question. Maybe we could take a stab at that in today's webinar too. I'll cover it really, really briefly. Cool, so we have another visualization here, and you can see slightly different charts that were specifically focused on the 46 to 55 bucket. The cool thing about notebooks is if you do ever want to just redo instead of making a new cell and then rerunning it and then it just being a really long thread of messages like chat, you can actually just update this prompt cell itself and update it. So maybe we'll do 33 to 45. Let's see what's going on here. 33 to 45 demographic. And you can press run and it'll rerun this cell itself. So notebooks does have a slightly higher learning curve, I would say, than threads. But there's so much more functionality in terms of rerunning cells or reordering cells or stopping cells from running. Interesting kind of error here. We'll let this run through. What I'm going to do is I'm going to refresh after this. I'm not sure why this popped up, but we'll see. But that's one of the benefits, I think, is as you're doing some sort of exploratory data analysis or you're diving into data for the first time, Notebooks helps with just the ability to rerun cells, especially if you go down maybe like the wrong turn, you want to do some other type of analysis. There are some cons to just working in one solid line, you know. I think I've seen that from chats with users. But we'll see that here, and you could redo this one here. Okay, so this is actually kind of interesting. Rows in the 33 to 45 segment, it looks like it got kind of confused. I think it's looking at primarily the specific rows, not the ages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to update this 33 to 45 age group demographic maybe, and we'll try to rerun this one again. So I think it's just an easy way to just scrap maybe like the most recent prompt that you ran, or just rerun a fresh prompt too. Cool. Well, there we go. Looks like it had a little bit better of a chance there. So I think last time it did look, well, maybe it is. Maybe there just aren't any customers in this data set that have 33 to 45. Let's go back and actually take a look. So I'm going to go over to my customers data frame. Oh, I see. It's because the age groups are ranges here. That's probably why. Let me change this then to, what would cover that? 33 to 45, 36 to 45? Is that it? So 36 to 45? We'll try this one out one more time. And this is why it's kind of handy to have both the Data Explorer open at the same time. So this way I would have known, like, hey, something was wrong with the age groups. Let this run. Cool. So this is essentially the flow we'll do throughout just the notebook creation process. I think the end goal always is to get something that you want to either share with folks or consume yourself, right? And that's either insights, right? So you have data, you want to analyze it, and you want to come up with, hey, what's inside of this data, or what are some next steps? That's one thing that you can generate. The other one is like visualizations, right? Sometimes you just need like a quick chart for updates too. Maybe you're running a weekly meeting with your team, or hey, you're doing a end of month report for your leadership team, or maybe you're trying to submit a paper at the end of a quarter or end of a semester. The last thing you might need at the end of all of this is just a visualization. But one of the cool things about notebooks, again, is all of these prompts and cells are all in the same notebook, right? It's all in the same spot. You don't have to start all the way over from the beginning. What you could actually do, so here we go, it actually updated. What you can actually do is just upload the file again at the very beginning and run through it. And I'll show that in the next step here. Cool, so we have our final visualization here with 36 to 45, and then also some key insights too. But imagine I wanted to rerun this notebook over again. Maybe next week I have to do the same analysis, or next week I have to do the same sort of analysis and same sort of key insights and visualizations, right? What you can do first is just, for ease of use, let's just click on the upper bar here on next to notebooks. And let's actually name this something. Let's name it weekly product analysis by customer. And you could even add a little description here. We'll say this notebook loads previews, does EDA, and analyzes the 36 to 45 demographic. Okay. That means when you go back to notebooks here, you'll see this notebook we just created, so the weekly product analysis. All you have to do is press create a new run. And all of those different prompts that we just had are all inside of this notebook now. You don't have to rewrite anything. You don't have to change anything if you don't want to. You could always change something if you do want to, but all you have to simply do is just add in the data. So if I go to workshop examples and I add in all of these, and then you could just click run all, and thinking back to it being a workflow, it'll run all of those different cells in order. I find this is really handy for if there's a type of workflow that you do. Maybe you have to process data a certain way every week, or maybe you're always extracting information from a PDF, or maybe you're doing just basic analysis like this every single week, and the last thing you just need is just a visualization to add to a slide deck. All you have to do is just update the files, run them all, and it'll generate all of the code. This probably fulfills, I would say, 95% of use cases. I would say call outs here that you might not realize is Julius is regenerating the code from scratch, right? All these models are what they call non-deterministic. There's not one set way for Julius to load and preview the data, right? It could write any number of combination of code in order to load and preview the data. Generally, that's okay, right? If you're doing something basic like loading preview data, it doesn't matter to me how it does it, right? But you can imagine when we start to go into more in-depth analysis and you want Julius to create a really specific visualization. Maybe you want it to be a line chart, or maybe you want a quarterly bar chart over time, right? Instead of a weekly bar chart over time. That's where you'll either need to be really specific in your prompt, so that way Julius recreates that every time it's attempting to regenerate the code. Or we'll walk through this in the next step, is to take the code itself and make it reusable. And I'll show you guys how to do that. This way you can get more consistent results, which I think a lot of people ask about. How can I get the same exact visualization or analysis every single time I rerun the notebook with fresh data? So here you can see, same sort of visualizations as it did before, but it's not exactly the same. Not always an issue if that's not important to you, but sometimes you do want some of the same exact visualizations. So here we see Julius is diving in, doing the EDA again, and then now it's going to run and generate those same charts and visualizations that we had before. So actually, let me go back. I'll go back to our template. And that's actually a good segue into what is the difference between what we were just looking at, which is actually called a run. When you rerun a notebook, it creates a run. And the initial notebook that we had created is just a template. So this is the template here that we were originally working on. So all of the same prompts, all of those same cells. So imagine, for example, I want to rerun this notebook over and over again. I'm fine with it regenerating code for the first 4 cells, loading and previewing and doing some EDA. But if I want Julius to really just recreate this visualization in the same exact way, but with just updated data, really easy to do it. And you can just click here on the top of the cell. I'm going to scroll up a little bit more here. Here we could see the cell. You'll see a little stamp icon which says turn into repeatable steps. Simply click on this. And what we'll do is we'll take this cell that we generated on the left side, that's the current state, and it's going to turn it into the new state, which is on the right side. And what it does is it takes the prompt we wrote, turns that into a text cell, so it's not actually a prompt anymore. It's not going to regenerate the code. And we take all 3 of the code cells that ran, or Julius attempted to run, and separates that code out specifically. And this way you can essentially just lock in the same exact solution to the prompt, or same exact code that Julius had ran to generate this visualization. A little bit easier for me to show you, so I'm just going to click accept for changes on the bottom right. And now you could simply just run all of these, and Julius will not regenerate the code, but will just use the same data and process it through all of that code itself. Let's see here if it's able to do it. Okay. Here's generating those tables. And then here we go. It was able to generate those visualizations too. If I didn't do that, right, Julius would have regenerated the code and it might have come up with a different looking visualization, or maybe different types of visualizations too. But that's sort of one way that we've built in the ability to make code and make notebooks and the analysis more reproducible, right? Getting a little bit more consistent with either previous runs or what you're expecting. So that's one way that you could do it there too. So if I were to, for example, go back to my notebooks, and I were to click on the play button, again, next to this notebook that I just created, you'll see all of those changes that I just did in the next run of the notebook. So all those code cells are there. Had a question earlier about BigQuery, right? Really easy to connect as well. You could simply add in any connector that you have. Here I'm just going to connect my Postgres. It's pretty much identical to BigQuery. In that sense, it's just a data warehouse that we're querying from. You don't need BigQuery, you don't need Postgres, you don't need data connectors if you don't have that. You can always just use files. But if you do have, Postgres or Supabase or some other data warehouse where you have your data stored, whether it's an app that you're building or wherever your company or university puts information, you could always connect it too. And what I'll do is I'll open up the side panel here, and I'll show you what this looks like. Here we can see that data warehouse that we have. And here's all the different tables and columns that we have inside of this Postgres connector. If you're using BigQuery, it's probably the same way. You probably have a whole bunch of different tables in there with information, or any other data warehouse that you're using. The cool thing is you could essentially do the same exact thing. You could write like, hey, show me stores. Maybe that's a good one. Show me stores that we have in Postgres. And you could run it. And then Julius will do slightly different workflow than what we just did with uploading files. It's going to write a SQL query to pull data from Postgres first. And then if we were to analyze the data, it will write Python in order to do whatever we're looking for. So in this case, it didn't need to, but it just wrote the query here to grab the data from our Postgres. And then now we can analyze it inside of our notebook. Why are data warehouses and data connectors important? Well, it comes to scheduling, which is a new feature that we just released yesterday. Scheduling helps bridge that gap between your fresh data, whether it's a fresh spreadsheet or fresh just data in your data warehouse, into your notebook, right? Historically, you would have had to, if those 4 files that I had uploaded before had changed, I would have had to update those in the Google Drive or in Excel, and then I would have had to bring them back into Julius and then rerun the notebook, right? Data connectors cuts through that, right? It goes straight to the source, right from the live pipeline. If there's data being updated in a warehouse, easier to just go straight to the source than having us write a query or download a CSV and update it manually. Let's talk briefly about scheduling. So imagine I do connect to a data warehouse, or I do have a Google drive folder that's always being updated manually or automatically, right? If you click on the notebook again, so here we'll go back to this one. I did that, sorry if I was going too fast. You can click on the middle notebook name here, so that weekly product analysis that we were working on. And then you can click on schedule here up in the upper right hand corner. You could toggle on enable schedule, and then you could select how often you want this to be run, whether it's daily, weekly, or monthly, and then even what time you want it to be run to as well. The really cool thing that we're still working on, this is still in progress, is the ability to run this notebook and take all of the results and throw it into Slack too. Really common ask from folks at companies that use Slack or have Slack integration too. We'll walk through this in another webinar, but just showing you this. This is likely going to change. It's probably going to look a lot different, but this is just one way that we'll do it. And then simply click Save Schedule. And now this notebook will be set to run at that exact time that I specified. You can actually test this out too. I'm going to click on Schedule in the upper right-hand corner. I'm going to click Test Now. And what this will do is Julius will create a brand new run, and it's going to run through all of those cells until it can try to get to the end, right? Ideally, works best with notebooks that you've been able to run all the way through yourself. That way, in case Julius runs into any errors, it won't get stuck. And then finally, when it's done, it'll give you a notification that, hey, we're done with the analysis. It'll send you an email, and it'll say, hey, we're done with the analysis. Click on this to see the notebook that we just ran for you. So that's one of the benefits there too. There's a lot to notebooks. I would say, again, it is a little bit more of a steeper learning curve, but a lot more functionality inside of notebooks here. If you're not sure where to get started after this webinar, I would say go to the notebooks templates page, and there's a whole bunch of different templates that the Julius team, as well as folks in the Julius community, have built for their use cases and wanted to just share. So for example, if you wanted to analyze your CRM data, you could click on this template and just click on Run Notebook. All you have to do is upload the files specified here. So this one's just saying, hey, if you have a CSV of your close loss reasons or some of the data from your CRM, just upload it, and then we'll do the analysis in all of these different steps. That's one way that you could also get started too. The other place is in our documentation, another great resource for folks. Inside of here, we have a notebook section, and you can see the different videos that we've recorded and some of the different information about things like cells that we just talked about. So prompt cells, file cells, for example, and even the reproducibility that we talked about. So splitting up the code from the prompts, and also scheduling, always adding to this. Last thing, if you're looking for more information, I would say you could also join our community Slack channel. There are several channels in here where you could either ask for help from either the Julius team or also folks that have joined the Julius community. We've already grown to 450 people so far, which is amazing. And then you could also we just spun up a Julius Experts channel. So there's folks out there that use Julius daily. It's just always trying to share some of the knowledge that they've learned either about Julius, interacting with Julius, or even just data analysis in general too. Mix of both non-technical, like myself, and technical folks too. And then finally, if you do have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us. There's two ways that you could do it. In the upper right-hand corner, there's 3 dots that you can click here, and you can click on Help, and this will open up our intercom. And you can ask or create a ticket if you're having a billing issue, or if you just have product questions, you could also ask here. And then finally, the last thing you could do is type in or send us an email at team@julius.ai, and then we'll get back to you as well. So a whole bunch of different ways for you to reach out to us. We're all open ears here. In fact, a lot of these features that we built were from users that had asked for it. Like our scheduled notebooks feature. Always people were done making a notebook like, hey, I want this to be just done for me. I don't want to run it myself. That's what this came from. Things like if I go to my notebook here, things like our generate analysis report. This was one of the first things that someone thought about when we were talking with some large enterprise customers. Like, hey, I love doing the analysis myself. I need to make analysis and visualizations for my manager and my leadership team. I don't want to show them any code, or I don't want to show them the prompts that I used. How can I get something that I could share with them pretty easily? So we got that feedback from someone, and we built this in a couple hours. In fact, I think multiple people on the team are racing to try to get this out. And what we have here is a simple report that has all of that information that we have, and the insights, and also some of the visualizations. Not in this one, since I didn't generate any in this notebook run. But you could also edit this. It's all Markdown. You could save it, and you could even download it as a PDF to share. Or you could even just share it. You just share this link, and then they'll get a direct link to this analysis. So let us know. Let us know your feedback too. And then next week, we'll have 2 different webinars going on. We'll have our onboarding webinar, where we'll go through, again, the basics to getting started. Maybe we'll do one in Spanish coming up in maybe 2 weeks or so. So we'll share that recording with y'all. And then the other one we'll do is a data connectors webinar. So how do you actually use things like BigQuery or Snowflake? And the newest one that we just added, if in case you have been monitoring this page like a hawk, is the SQL Server. Really common request from folks. So really trying to just meet you guys at your data too. And then likewise, we also have our Google Ads and Meta Ads. If you guys are running ads at work, if you're managing campaigns, or you're running any sort of ads or ad assets, you can analyze their performance here as well. And then finally, if there's any other connectors you're not seeing here, or you're not even sure what a connector is, just request one, and you can type it in, and we monitor this accordingly too. In fact, I would say all of these ones that we've built have been stack ranked based off of demand that we've gotten from folks, including some of these MCPs too, or at least the ones that are available as well. Having said, we're going to hang out in here for another 5 or so more minutes, see if there's any other questions. I see Drew and Simon have been answering questions in the chat. Any other questions, let us know. At the end of this webinar, I will share this notebook that we just created in a follow-up email. We'll follow up with other resources to help you get started, including our prompting guide, which I think is pretty useful. And then, yeah, let us know if you have any feedback too for these sessions. I think this one came from some feedback that, hey, I want to do a workbook, or a notebook live in a live session. And I do kind of like the vibe. I think it's a little bit more chill, easy to follow along than just to be talked at for at least 45 minutes. Or at least that's what I hope is a little bit better for these ones too. Awesome. All right. What do code and text do? I didn't really touch on this, huh? Text cells are essentially just a big markdown cell that you could put inside of your notebook, useful for taking notes or for telling users of your notebook what this does, right? So I've seen folks outline like, hey, this section does X, Y, or Z, like this code does this, right? It's also useful for just getting your notebook organized. The code cells is exactly what it kind of sounds like. It's just a code cell that's run inside of this notebook. You could do Python, you could also do your own R, or you could also do your own SQL too. So whatever language that you're using, you could use that here, and Julius will run that code specifically. It won't generate the new code. I've seen folks use this by either copying code that Julius has generated before and just helping keep things consistent, or by using code from Claude or using code from ChatGPT and using that first to edit their code and then bring it back into Julius in case they don't want the code that Julius had generated. Any way to import data containing emails? It depends. It depends on how you store that data, right? I would say if it's in a Google Sheet or if it's in some sort of CSV or Excel file, all you have to do is just simply upload it and add it here. And then Julius will be able to extract those emails. The other way that you could do it is use one of our data connectors. And you could say, for example, if I open up this one, inside of this Postgres database, let me see if it'll open that. I don't know if there's a user table in this one, but if you do, maybe customer demographics. You could say, hey, grab me all the emails from X table with Y criteria. That's another way that you could sort of import the data that way. And finally, the one I could think of is if you have it stored somewhere, maybe like in your intercom, or if you have it in somewhere else, you could just add it here using the MCP connector. All you have to do is just authorize or log into your intercom through Julius, and then you could pull from whatever data source that is, whether it's intercom. Common one that we have folks request from us are like HubSpot or Salesforce, some of the other common CRMs that are out there. But that's the other sort of way that you can do that. Okay, I'm wondering how best to use, best work with R using RStudio. I see that you can download IPYMB, but not, yeah. It's something that we've gotten some feedback about. I'll forward that to the team. I think there are quite a few power users of R that have essentially used Julius, and so we're always looking for different ways that we can help support there. But I'll forward that to the team. I think that would be cool if there's some way where, in case you guys aren't familiar, if you go to a notebook, in the right-hand corner, you could download as a Jupyter notebook, which downloads exactly as an IPYNB file. But I'll see if there's other ways that we could download this as something that's more R-friendly. And the other cool thing is if you do already have one, you could import files, IPYNB or Jupyter notebook files too, using this button there too. Cool. Awesome. With that being said, thank you guys so much for joining. If you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out. Again, that's team@julius.ai, or reach out to us through our intercom, and we'll gladly get back to you guys too there. Again, we'll have 2 new webinars. We'll have webinars on next Tuesday Pacific Standard Time at the same exact 1 p.m. here. And then we'll also do one on Thursday where we'll talk through data connectors as well. Be sure to subscribe to our Luma and then also our YouTube for any other upcoming events that we have. And then also for all of the previous recordings, you can see them in our YouTube as well. But we'll send that out in an email afterwards. Hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and rest of your night, or great rest of your evening. And we'll see you guys in the next webinar. Thank you guys for joining. Bye.